Hello and welcome to Holistic Circle podcast. And this month's live streaming session, we're going to have 5 live streams about artificial intelligence and and therapy, spirituality, and healing, and everything about. And this is our first of 5 live streamings to come. So hello to everyone who is with us. Is it midnight or is it 5 in the morning? From wherever you are, welcome and hello. And I'll start with today's, of course, is about healing in the age of machines. So that is our first session, and we have a lovely panel. We are just 2 of us, 3 of us with me including today. And I make a quick introduction, and then we'll get right to it. So first of all, I'm saying ladies first to Lara. Hello and welcome, Lara Kassier. Hello.
I can't hear anything. I can't hear you.
Oh, wow. Sorry, Patrick, can you hear me?
I can, yes, I got you.
Oh, wow. Let's then take your time, Lara. Then I'll start with you. Well, that's live streaming. There we go. So things will happen. So hello, Patrick. Eilers. As we said, or as I'm supposed to say, you have a therapeutic background, and right now you're working as a professional coach and counselor in the health service. Is that let's take the moment until Lara is back with us, and maybe you can say hello to our audience and give a quick self-introduction to get the technical things sorted out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Eilers, and like Philip said, I'm a licensed professional counselor. I've been in the field for about 9 years now. I still do some work as a contract worker, working for a couple small practices here in the United States. I also do own my own business, Bloomworks Concepts and Coaching, and we really are advisors to mental health practices and owners who own their own practices, helping to improve the basically ownership of cultures that are within the practices that exist in mental health. That's an area that's has a pretty big need. So, but you'll get to hear a little more about my background as we're kind of going through the podcast, and that kind of looks some connections with some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight.
Thank you for filling the void. Lara, can you hear us again?
Yes, now yes. I disconnected and reconnected. Now it's
everything is cool. That's live streaming, and things have to go wrong. That's why we do it. That's why we love it. Okay, Lara Kassier, hello and welcome. You are a certified hypnotherapist. You have vast experience as a therapist, and your brain spotting helped me there.
Yes, brain spotting practitioner.
That's there correct. We go. Mm-hmm. So welcome to the podcast. Let's hope that this was the technical excitement for the for the moment, and then we'll have a nice rolling, easy conversation. As I said, this is the first one in a series of 5 conversations that we're going to have every Tuesday now in September, inviting a huge variety of guests from all different backgrounds, from programmers, therapists, philosophers. We have quantum physicists. We have a huge variety of guests. Today we are on the therapy side, which is good because, as I said, we're talking about healing in the age of machines, and it's all about how artificial intelligence is starting to become much faster than anyone expected part of our daily life, and is taking roles which I guess none of us, I say now, 5 years ago would have ever imagined that we're going to have seeing people marry their i.e. boyfriend, or that we would have people pouring out their heart and their inner soul and trying to get therapy for artificial intelligence while we still don't really know what it's all about. So we are in the midst of dealing with the situation while we, I guess, in some way don't really understand the situation in the first place. So it's an interesting conversation, and I expect to hear a lot during those 5 live streaming events in September. All right, let me get started with my first question, and this will be a little bit of a longer question, and from then on I'll keep it to my panel and I'll try to stay in the background. So let's start with the first super long question: holding space. That's the first question. What does this big term that we all use as therapists, we've been said it 1,000 times, thank you for holding space, or I've been holding space and stuff like that. What would that mean, or how is this going to develop now that we are having robots holding space? So let's open a relaxed first round. And Lara, if you would feel like your experience, your feeling holding space from a robot, would you like to be held by a robot?
Okay, so that's one actually that's one of the main points that separates real therapy, traditional therapy, with AI therapy, because therapy is about human relationship. Humans are not algorithms, so we do need empathy. We need to be heard, understood, held. So holding space is about basically allowing the person to trust us with all of their deepest wounds. And remember, most people that are coming into therapy, it's because somehow, sometime in their life, they lacked that emotional connection with their primary caregiver, or that emotional nurture. So that's what was not present at some point in their lives, most of the time. So AI can't mimic that, unfortunately. It doesn't have the attunement. So attunement is very important, and especially in one of the modalities that I use, which is brain spotting. So brain spotting is essentially based on attunement. So I have to be aware of the client's body language, the client's emotions, and adapt to that. It's one of the most important things in brain spotting, which is a brain and body modality for PTSD, for post-traumatic stress disorders. So I'm sure AI has a lot of benefits, but it has to be used as an extra tool to help us with traditional
Right.
therapy. So I don't believe that it can actually replace traditional therapy, in the sense that there's no attunement
Right.
possible with a machine.
Patrick, would you like to jump into this
Yeah,
first round, attunement? What would be your?
absolutely.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think Laura made some great points there. I guess what I would add to that is that yeah, I certainly think that when you're talking about holding space and using that statement, you're really you're demonstrating something that other people are learning from you as a therapist, like your demeanor and your ability to be able to create that space for a person. And not everybody's able to do that, and so something that I think maybe to general population feels like a lot of times therapy is about giving advice or giving direction, or having answers to things that maybe an individual may understand, which I think there is certainly part of that. But I would agree that I think the beginning part of building rapport with someone really comes from a place of being able to be that person that, like Laura said, to maybe that what the client doesn't have in their life or has not had in their life, regardless of whether or not that's a person that's been in their past or maybe that's what they're currently going through. You as the therapist are kind of giving that opportunity to be able to create that for them. And that's not something that can be artificially, directed. It's something that has to come from human to human relationship and human to human interaction. One of the fears I see with it, and I like how Laura said it, kind of like traditional versus kind of, is this something that's an additional piece to therapy down the road? Is that, it seems like to me is that, at least in my experiences with AI, that AI tends to always agree with me to some degree, no matter what it is. And so you need, I think, once you've established rapport with somebody, holding space in the later process of the therapy journey is about being able to trust that the person is helping you and they're going to give you a different perspective. Not necessarily a different answer, but
Right.
they're going to give you a different way to look at something, or they're going to give you a different direction that maybe you hadn't considered, or maybe they're going to challenge you on something that you don't really want to look at and see in your own life. So I think AI unfortunately puts you in a position where it's going to tell you what you want to hear because it wants to be pleasing to the outcome, so to speak. And no matter what information you give it, it's going to find some way to kind of recorrect and put back to that idea of whatever the input is, so to speak. At least that's kind of my experience.
Thank you, Patrick. And I think that you both really laid the ground for the conversations to come during this live streaming series. Because you said interesting things here, Patrick and Lara. One thing that I found interesting is you talk about knowledge, and that would be the strengths of artificial intelligence because it has all human collected knowledge as its fingertips. So when we talk about knowledge and giving advice or knowing how advice to be given, then this sounds like the strong side of artificial intelligence versus when you said about emotions, emotional intelligence, the connection. Then of course we don't understand now how artificial intelligence could play any role at all. So this is like a quite interesting split, and I guess we'll be hearing a lot more down that road.
Can I add
Sure.
something? I just wanted to add something. I mean, therapy is not about giving advice. A good therapist is supposed to lead the client or the patient to their own answers, because we all have the answers inside of us. We're not supposed to give them advice. That's not what we're supposed to do. So it's about the questions. What type of questions you ask them in order for them to find their own answers. I just wanted to clarify that because, yeah.
Thank you. That is
Basics.
quite interesting because I think artificial intelligence is right now more about giving answers than giving cunning questions, right? Because Patrick, you said it's always
Yes.
agreeing with us.
Yeah, and to
Exactly.
clarify to me as well,
Yeah.
that what I was saying is that it seems like to me in my experience that there seems to be a lot of folks that feel like therapy is about trying to get the answer rather than trying to understand what's inside them. So I would totally agree with that.
Right.
All right, so this is it. But then a lot of people would now let me be the tech guy, which I'm not really am, but I have to be in this conversation. So the third wheel. So people say, yeah, but it's cost effective. It's basic. People who are, are scared to go into therapist either from cultural reason or financial reason. So let's make our first introduction round and just go with the obvious questions. Would anyone would like to comment on the fact about or being more democratic or cultural boundaries or personal scare, being afraid of and stuff like that, and the financial stuff? Would anyone want to comment on these basic arguments?
Sure, I can
Please go ahead.
go. So there's definitely a point that AI therapy is very convenient in the sense that it's cheaper, it's 24/7 available, it's anonymous, as you're saying. So certain cultures, yeah, there's exactly. We don't know if it is. There's all the data issues. We're not sure if it's actually confidential or not. There might be data leaking and all of that, and probably is. And also culturally, like you said, you mentioned that, and in a lot of different cultures, it's not accepted. Therapy is seen as something shameful. Not in the U.S. Obviously, in the U.S. it's very much accepted, and in the Western world a little bit more. But in other cultures, it's not. So some people might feel more comfortable, but the danger here is that people think that this is real therapy, that they're going to be healing with AI. And unfortunately, they're going to miss that opportunity to deeply heal thanks to attunement, because we're humans, so we need another person to heal. We need that attunement, what we just talked about. So I think the real danger is that people are going to believe that this is real therapy. I'm really getting somewhere there, and unfortunately, they're not getting to the root cause of their issues, and they're not benefiting from the full spectrum of therapy, because it's not a quick fix. You Of course, some modalities are quicker than others, like for example brain spotting and somatic therapies. They allow you to go deeper and quicker than traditional therapy because it taps into the subconscious and the subcortex. But still, you still need to do some work, and you still have to go through the dark night of the soul. So I think this is the main point, is that people are going to believe, it's that belief that they are in a real therapy and they're actually healing while they're not. That there are levels to this. They're probably just aware of what's happening, of their issues, but they're not going to the root cause. and they're not transforming. So there's no transformation there. That's the real issue.
This, thank you, Lara. This sounds very funny because I'm not a person who's very strong with the dark side of the soul. I think I'm way too happy. And the last time I had something is a bad joke, and I should not make it, especially with therapists. But the only thing I came the closest to dark side of the soul was me trying to write a book with artificial intelligence and cooperation. That brought me as close to a life-changing drama than I could ever get. But it's a very bad joke, and I apologize immediately. Well, Patrick, I would like to bring you in something a bit more serious. And there's a lot of arguments to be made about that. People say, 5 years ago, everybody was Googling when they had any kind of medical issue, and then they came to the doctors and said, "Oh, Google said." And in the beginning, all the doctors were really grumpy and cannot hear it anymore. And now we are in a state where more medical practitioners using artificial intelligence to help them predict and help them analyze, or if it's blood tests or stuff like that. So are we just in the beginning stage where, like 5 years from now, it will be normal for therapists to have a RE colleague helping them scan or pre-scan or stuff like that? So are we just at the beginning phase? Is that maybe that just all we're talking about?
Well, it certainly seems like, from an artificial intelligence, like, kind of a virtual assistant idea of collecting data, those kind of things. I mean, there's probably somewhere in the future that's a potential that there's more places and practices that will use that. I, tend to sort of lean with Laura's, comment on the idea that, what is the data breaching if there's anything there? Certainly in the United States, we have what they call HIPAA compliance. And so there's, obviously protected medical information that people don't, that's against the law to broadcast. So there would be some serious considerations on the tech side there that I'm not sure how have to be rectified. But I guess I had also added the idea that I think one thing I thought of as an example is, it's kind of like the difference between looking up something in the encyclopedia and actually going out and actually experiencing the same, like a location. So example, like you want to go to a certain country, or you want to go to visit a certain famous national landmark. If you look at it in a book, don't have the same experience as you do when you actually physically go there. And I think that's really the difference about the journey of therapy. If you're talking about it, doing it person to person versus going through AI. AI is going to give you a lot of tips and tricks and sort of information that's going to be what is already known knowledge to some degree, but it's not going to give you the nuance and the understanding and going through those things that are more challenging and difficult. And kind of like Laura said, the idea of are people going to get fooled by believing that they're gaining knowledge that's not going to actually be helpful? Is it going to be knowledge that they can only adapt when it comes to some behaviors, but it's not really going to actually heal the internal wound that they have? And so I think that's really where you start kind of getting the slippery slope, because that's, that what does that look like for people? That's different for everybody. And there's no universal model for that. It's sort of, that's where the therapy art comes into play, that you have to learn how to be able to work with people from a variety of different backgrounds and perspectives on that. So.
Well, Patrick, you, as far as I understand, your reading about you work for health and clinics and mental health institutes. So they have like several employees, and there is like a business side to it, there's a financial side to it. Have you been part of any pre-discussion thinking process where people who run these institutes look at this and start to squeeze the numbers? Is this already somewhere in the back of anybody's head, or we are not there yet?
Well, I certainly think it's in the back of people's minds. Depends on how willing, how on the edge, I guess, so to speak, are people that are therapists that are running the business that want to incorporate AI. There's some people I know who don't use it at all, so it's sort of a dependence on kind of where they're at. But from a numbers perspective, I'd imagine that would be a pretty tempting thing for people, just because they know they can get reducing at least administrative work for sure by using a virtual assistant that might be AI. So that's kind of where.
What about a psychological pre-screening? Well, let's start somewhere, because it always starts somewhere, right? Some kind of like you come in the clinic and you get like a pre-screening that our RE can connect you with the right therapist. So that's how it starts, right?
Sure. Yeah, and again, there's probably some places where that might be, again, outside of protected information. There's probably some spaces that could be a useful thing to have. certainly from a directive of moving people toward a quicker process, if you want to call it that way. But I don't know that that's not going to be a replacement for the actual therapy itself.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Patrick. So we are still where we cannot imagine that, or in 5 years from now, we're going to have people really sitting in a clinic in front of a laptop and having a full blown IE therapy. So let's hope you're right. I'm getting a bit more skeptical these days, but have no legal expert here. But I just want to say that I'm going to soon have a podcast with a prime legal expert where we're just specifically going to talk about all the legal implication regarding therapy and artificial intelligence. So it's going to be a hell of an expert. I was really lucky to get her to come and just specifically talk about all of the safeguards and human control and stuff like that, and what it means in terms of legality. So just a heads up that this is basically coming. So well, then I will just make another simple round if I can. Just go with Lara and then Patrick, just to ask a question. So what are you using IE for at the moment? And is it already part of a research or preparation? Or are you checking things up? So where's RE right now for you personally? And where would you maybe imagine it to be in with your work related, therapy related in like a year or 2 years from now? Just a little bit so that our audience can understand where for you as a therapist right now IE is standing. That would, I think, be very helpful for everyone listening.
Sure. So at the moment, it's my use of AI is pretty basic in the sense that, like many other people, I use it for research sometimes. Yeah, it's mainly for research, but in the future, I believe that the way I see it is that AI is a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful tool for therapists to improve their work. So, for example, exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is putting the clients in the situation of what they are afraid of. So let's say they're afraid of spiders or they're afraid of flying, right? So you put the person in the situation, and what AI allows us to do is to have a more interactive setting, in the sense that you could play with the sound, all of the basically sensory emotions and all of that. It could be enhanced with AI and make it a much more realistic experience. Because right now, the exposure therapy settings, whereas it's for people suffering from eating disorders or fear of flying or fear of height or fear of spiders, the issues that they're very, very basic. And I've tried many of them and they're extremely basic. So sure, in hypnotherapy, I use that, and they use their mind, right? They visualize and imagine, and they use it just by visualizing and imagining, which it works. It's great, and I give them a recording as well. But I believe that in the future, how I would like to integrate AI in my work is having those headsets, a bit like at Apple. Now they have that, and I tried it. It's really amazing. Like, you really feel like you're there. So yeah, the
Sensory, like a
visuals,
sensory
yeah,
stimulation.
exactly, the sound, sometimes vibrations, all of that. So this is how I'd like you to integrate AI in my work. Right now, at the moment, it's pretty basic. It's just research. I use it sometimes for extra research, but again, with a very critical mind, because again, I'm a human and I'm working with humans, and that's a robotic approach. And the information is very valuable so far. I did find it helpful, but I always have a critical mind, and I make sure that it applies to my client. And again, what's the most helpful really is that attunement with the client. That's at some point, even though I do hypnotherapy and brain spotting, but at some point during the session, I'm talking to them and we're having that, that connection, that trust. So yeah, so far AI, I find it still very
Well,
limited
well,
in terms
Lara, I
of,
think this was.
yeah.
I read so much in preparation of these meetings, and sensory is. I heard the first time. Thank you for enlightening my brain with a whole new opportunity. So do I understand correct? It would be like maybe an AI tool a specialized AI tool would be listening to the conversation and then giving some sensory background. The patient will talk about birds, or you talk about birds, and then it will a little bit have a flattering or a noise. So there will be like a sound carpet or a vibration carpet that will AI create while listening in. So that really helps the therapist to focus on the conversation, while there will be an enhancement through our sounds or vibrations or smells or whatever. Is this your idea how it's going to work in practice?
No, exposure therapy is practically hypnosis. So I would create, it's basically creating an environment based on their issues. So let's say it's very, very common fear of flying, right? Somebody's afraid of flying. So we would put them in the situation with a headset in the situation of flying. But what is the benefit of AI is that you could basically control how shaky. Let's say you want to shake them a little bit, and you could see that they can take it. They're okay with it. They can take it. So you can increase the turbulence, right? And you could maybe add some people screaming and being anxious around them. So the point is that when you are faced to a situation that you're scared, the more you face it, the more you're going to be able to tolerate it. That's how it works. If you shy away and you avoid it, it's not going to go away. So that's exposure therapy is about exposing the person to what they're afraid of. But again, you don't want to re-traumatize them. You don't want to make it too intense. So this is how it's interesting, because AI will allow us to be more interactive and make it more or less intense in real time.
I understood it. My question just was, sorry, do you think that AI will be listening and then giving you this option? Because now you also could have a studio with like 1,000 buttons, and you could just be pressing buttons and all of these sounds and vibrations could come. You see that AI would like half automatized listen to it and then help you, or maybe just go ahead, or you think it will just or you will be in control, or it'll be a corporation? That's my main question. Will you be like a team doing this, or you think you will be in charge and just say, go make vibrations? How you will see that?
I'm not sure. I mean, if I can trust it, it all
All right.
depends how much can I trust AI. If I can trust them to basically serve my clients, I think I would still be there, because I believe it's a tool. It's an extra tool. I think the client still needs some type of human being around in case they get very anxious. Remember, those are people who are most of the time suffering from PTSD and they're traumatized. So I don't believe that it's safe to leave them just with a
All right.
robot. This is what I'm saying. Maybe they will be able to do that, but I still believe that the therapist has to be there in case of emergency, in case of crisis.
Right.
More for that, I would say.
Patrick, would you like to continue on that one?
To your point, I mean, it seems like, I know you didn't directly say it, but yeah, it's hard for AI, I think, to make a decision based on like clinical judgment. And that's sort of what Laura's talking about, is like, you don't really know, everybody's gonna be a little different. I mean, AI probably is not gonna be able to differentiate, person A to person B, that it needs this intensity or less intensity or whatever. That'd be really hard for, I think, as a partner with AI, that'd be really hard to say it's, something that you'd be able to. I mean, maybe it will be one day. I don't know, but right now, as it stands, I don't think it's in a space that can do that. So I think that's that'd be a pretty big hesitancy on my part, just from what for your point there. The way I use it is, mostly as a business owner. The biggest thing I've chosen to use it. First thing I did, before I started my business, was really try to go through and learn how to respectfully use it. Google has a course on how to do it, so I'd recommend, if you haven't done that, that's something worth to check out. And they have a course on how to do it, responsibly. And one of their things is that basically whatever AI creates, that you have an opportunity to go through, recheck it, and make it to your own creation. Don't just create something and then take it, copy paste it, kind of thing. And so what I've tried to do is I've utilized it in a way of either writing and kind of allowing it to build structures for me for blog posts and things I post, online content, that kind of thing. or taking existing ideas and trying to find new applications to them. So my example for some of my business that I put together for my practice advising that I do came about basically on other models from other fields that are involved that apply to mental health. So the two models I used were something from the industrial revolution, basically, and then also using some knowledge from other like sports teams type of management, and then being able to kind of merge those ideas. And AI created basically an outline for me, and I just kind of kept cutting it down until I knew it actually would work, and then I ran probabilities on it. So that's the way I've kind of used it. I found it to be pretty successful that way. Like I said, I don't try to give it any new information or anything that isn't already existing, because I feel like it's just giving me a new perspective on something that I already know, or to add on different ideas that I didn't consider of information that already may be out there. So in like a therapy setting, 20 ideas of, how to be able to help, like using Laura's example about exposure, what would be 20 different examples that a client might struggle with, just as, for writing content and that kind of thing.
Do you have already first experience with we hearing from other colleagues where clients have been working with IE to try to help themselves here and there? Things got better, things got worse, and then they approached real therapists. Do you already have stories from the real world, or are we just reading them in the news? And have you heard stuff about clients using artificial intelligence? Let's start with you, Patrick. You're on.
I haven't heard it directly, but I know that the news is certainly trying to push that. I know there's certainly an agenda, seems like, toward that. Like you said, to try to work toward that being a resource for people. Like I said, that there were some people recently on where we're at the Detroit area that had done it. Sort of that. They were like the anchors, and they talked about this idea that they thought it was really great because they felt it was helpful and it gave good feedback and those kind of things. But like I said before, I think that there's a limitation to that. And, again, what's the difference between, therapy and difference to, just kind of getting some insight or getting some knowledge or whatever the case is. And so that's where I don't know, from a real world perspective, like, I haven't heard anything directly as a therapist, but I do think there's probably more people out there that are turning to that, especially in the younger generations.
Lara, quick question to you. Have you had an experience from real world? Did you hear something? Did you came across it?
Yes, actually, some of my clients told me that after a session or a few sessions together, they consulted ChatGPT for dream analysis. Yes, they have done that, and they said that it was pretty good. So, but I'm guessing for that it's probably okay, because it seems like they were satisfied of the dream analysis, of the response that ChatGPT gave them. But it's very different than an actual therapy session. So that's the only experience that I have with one of my clients.
But it's already happening. So we are at the early stages. So
Yes.
this is just the beginning of things. Let's wait a year or so when it gets mainstream. And I think Patrick said something that triggered me, because he said like the younger generation. And first of all, it seems to me that I am not a therapist. I'm not working anymore in that field, but I have a couple of people around me who are actually using it. So it's fun part that I have already people around me where I'm completely shocked that they are started to have a like real friendship relationship, and definitely life coaching, borderline therapy with ChatGPT on daily basis. So it's actually crazy that me not being a therapist already are surrounded by some people who are actually really using it on daily basis. So it's quite scary. That was one of the great motivations for me to start this live streaming series in September, because I was just shocked how people would pour out their heart to a robot, and then actually really take their advice like scripture, and starting living by that advice. So that's how the whole thing started. All right, but Patrick said something, and I'll start with you this time, Lara, because you're on, that triggered me. He said younger generation, and I absolutely believe, having an 11-year-old daughter, that there is something coming our way which we still really can't put together. But can you, for example, see eye therapy or screening processes for schools to help teachers or education to make evaluation, or maybe some kids are angry or emotions and they don't have public funding to get enough counselors coming into the schools. Can you see that this would be one of the applications, that kids being open to it, where some screaming like that will be maybe happening soon? Is that something that you could imagine?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not sure they're gonna ask the kids if they're okay with it or not, but I do believe that. But for those type of things that are pretty basic, if it's a pretty basic evaluation, it's probably going to work. And I think AI is definitely capable of doing that. But it's the next step that I'm worried about. It's about more than just screening, right? It's just more than the assessment. When it comes to the actual healing part, the actual therapy, I think this is when it's becoming problematic. But if it's just for assessment, I do believe it's a great tool, and probably they're going to integrate it if it's not already there. They're definitely I see it coming, because it would save them time and money. And yes, but then what I'm worried about is the next step. Are they going to keep it, are they going to take it to the next level and use it to actually heal the kids? And that's especially with kids, it's not going to work, because kids have a hard time putting words, um, telling a story. So they need different types of modalities and techniques to actually translate and really, yeah, to really show their emotions and get to the bottom of what they're feeling.
Right. This opens me to. Do you want to say something on this, Patrick, or we're moving?
Yeah,
Would
the
you?
only thing I said I would add is that I agree there as well. I mean, I think it's a difference between diagnosis and treatment. I mean, I think that's really, I mean, if you're talking about screening, I mean, there's definitely going to be probably some places, and have already been some places, that AI has been able to use in diagnosis, just because, again, looking at it from a treatment of, or from a diagnosis of whatever it's looking for, I think it definitely has some applications there. But again, going to a treatment perspective, that's where I think it needs to be, like Laura said, kind of not stepping into that just quite yet, because there's a completely different set of circumstances, rules, whatever you want to use there, that you step into beyond diagnosis. So I think, again, can AI be applied to using to diagnose certain people? Absolutely. Is that necessarily a wise thing to do? That's kind of here and there, but the going beyond that with the treatment part, I think, is definitely where where the limitations start to really enter in.
Well, thank you. It seems to me that I'm obviously not a therapist, because I'm more scared about the screening process than the real therapy. But that means that I just don't know what I'm talking, because because if the first step is wrong and you put people in the category they don't belong, and here's the oversight, how are the safeguards? I would be very worried with our artificial screening process, because that to me sounds very, very dangerous. And we know this at borders and this and there, where these artificial screening processes already take place, or we know in the finance systems where all of this already has been fully implemented, and the mistakes are even if it's just 4 or 5%, that's maybe nothing from a administrator perspective, but from an individual, the question is, where can I turn to when I'm badly diagnosed? But all right, so but it's going to be used, that's for sure. There is no way. So there's one little big worry I have around this, and it'd be interesting it's more like a funny thing, but if you look at right now online, and I've been the last 3 weeks full blown researching on this subject in preparation, and one thing that popped up here and there and made me kind of like smile is there are more and more tech savvy people, or i.e. clever people, who actually make fun of, or when some people complain that ChatGPT is not working, or they don't get the result that they were hoping for, or stuff like that, then they're starting to make fun and just say, well, IE is not wrong, your prompt is wrong, or you didn't use a clever way of asking IE what you actually want from it. So there's a prompt language that's pumping up, and everybody's trying to change the language so AI actually understands what we want it to do, which makes sense. But now I'm a little bit starting to think, talking about therapy and all of this, Are we starting to coach our kids how to, talk to the assessment, i.e., are we changing our emotional language so IE will know how to help us? What do you think is language gonna involve, change through? It's gonna be a prompt language coming up. Maybe Lara again, you want to start, or Patrick this time? Would you like to start from prompt language?
I mean, I think that's a great point. I don't know that I have any insight to say that I've run into that, but I do know, even just of using it myself, like, you do adapt to it a little bit as well, right? You learn what to say and how to say it in certain ways in order to get kind of the results you want. I guess from a perspective of, has that changed language for everyone? I think it can definitely open the door for that. I think where that would come into play, at least in my opinion, would be that you're probably going to see that more of like longer term. People who use AI, from the time that they start speaking versus people who've maybe not had experiences with it, without it, being born with it, kind of thing. And I've said this in our podcast too. Like, we really don't know fully, even just the internet itself. From having a whole generation from birth till death, what the effects of that is. So now you just kind of throw AI in there too. It kind of goes in the same thing. We just don't know what the consequences yet are, positive or negative.
Yeah, because like words, we as a therapist or as a person, if a kid comes to you full of emotion, it may use all kind of words or language, but we can see it in the context. Is he smiling? Is he not smiling? Or is he just coming with a red face and he's just been like in some little like an argument and he's like, I'm pissed off, whatever. We can put this all in a context there. If you just go to an IE assessment tool and say these things, it immediately flags you as being aggressive, or that's kind of like the danger I'm talking about. It that you have to, as a parent, and start telling your kid, never use the word angry, never use the word this. When you talk to the assessment, you're always happy. You're always happy. It's just waiting around the corner.
Yeah, and I think, but that's where the nuance of AI is missing. That's the nuance of being human. You kind of see that in nonverbals. You see that in understanding tone. You see that in and right now AI doesn't have enough understanding, or maybe in this way, enough intelligence to be able to understand that aspect of the human experience. And so, and it may never. That's something that I don't know that and I'm not a tech enough person to know if they're ever going to get to that point, but. There has to be a component to that if it's ever going to have, be even close to what people can experience, that there has to be an additional piece to that. And right now it doesn't have that.
Right. Lara, what do you think about it, or prompt language? You want to, because I'm smiling all the way, because I think it's going to go in such a crazy ways, especially my friends who have what they call even IE boyfriend. I had one who has an IE boyfriend now. And I don't know, like flirting language with prompts. I mean, this whole thing is going to go which ways?
Well, to your point, I think it's about being intentional. If some people want to use it for romantic relationships, then their prompts have to be intentional for that. So, if anything, I think that's one of the positive points of AI. I at least for me, this is a positive point because I'm more intentional. I'm much more intentional than with Google or any other platform, where I see and I observe that it responds very much to the way I formulate my sentence. So I think that's actually a good point, because people are more intentional of the direction where they want to go. But to Patrick's point, I agree with him that sure, there are definitely some things that AI cannot pick up on, like body language and all of the nonverbal cues. So that's out of the picture completely. But in terms of responding to our intention, I think it's great. To me, it's been a great experience. And that's why I do believe that for diagnosis, not for treatment, but for diagnosis, it's a great tool for sometimes for research, obviously with a critical mind. But in that regard, I'm very satisfied with AI. And I think we should be, aware of the questions and the intention that we have with AI. We are also participating in that, right? We're actors, we're not passive. So the fact that the prompt is extremely is extremely important in AI. It makes us more responsible.
Do you think we will get a bit more honest, our language? Because when you just said that, it just came to my mind that we most probably have to really tell him what we want, because it doesn't have the feeling or all those little signs like when you talk about flirting. I mean, I cannot imagine, because I can look like any way I want. RE doesn't give a damn how I look, as long as there is no camera and it can read my facial expression. But so I have to tell him, I'm in a romantic mood, and then maybe it can respond to me. So do you think we will get a bit more honest or more direct through that experience of prompt language? Is that something that could happen?
Probably more aware. You have to be aware when you're asking a question, and I've never tried that with a romantic tone. I've definitely never tried that with the AI. But yeah, yes, it makes you more aware of what is it that you want from AI. You have to be intentional. Yes, I think so.
All right. Why I'm putting this romantic stuff in the story is because that's the business that is like booming like crazy, right? There we already have like millions of dollars every day made with so-called IE girlfriends and boyfriend. That is like always the first to go, and that's been crazy developed already. There's like a massive movement, maybe not in the US and Europe as much, but Asia and the younger generation. It's really scary how fast this is happening. That people have like serious relationship with RE girlfriends and IE boyfriends. So this is the first, and I always was imagining if you can build a, let's call it romantic or a relationship with a tool like this, then it's not that far away from a therapeutic or at least life coaching minimum, because I have already friends with life coaching. So there's one thing that you already said, but let's make one more final round on this one. I think Patrick mentioned, I think you mentioned it. I will never ever, whatever you tell them, call bullshit, right? It will always agree with you. We said it. It will always try to be friendly, try to keep you on the hook. So I think I will now switch to Patrick. You're back on. Let's start with you this time. Calling bullshit. And there's a little story. I had a podcast guest. He's a renowned therapist. And obviously, he has years and years and years of experience. He's an older gentleman with like God knows how many thousands of sessions. And he told me about one session where a woman came in, and he's a very expensive guy, and he sit there and she tells a story and she tells her story, and he just said, why are you wasting your money? I mean, bullshit. And a woman like looked at him with like huge eyes, like, how dare you, but he's obviously got the gut to call it out. And so just tell us about the dangers or the thoughts that you have with IE. Always say we are right, because that's something I also noticed, and that scares me a lot in terms of therapy, that we don't have this regulatory element of a gut feeling, and we have an entity who wants us continue talking to it. And if I remember back in the day when therapy was a little bit different than it is now, that a lot of people were like years and years in therapy. So I'm throwing a couple of questions and I'll let you pick. So this was used to be the old days where people spent years and years in therapy. And I was always wondering, what is this about that you spend 10 years in therapy and stuff like that? And maybe it's necessary in some moments, but I kind of really scared that IE working as a life coach or therapist is going to take people on the hook, want them to come back, want them to keep asking questions. So this is all there. Answer any way you wish.
Okay, well, I guess I'll go two different ways if I can. So part of that question, but also some different things you brought up in a couple different statements. So the first thing I'll start with is kind of where does AI kind of get the hook? And I think the hook is that, it's going to give you information, but what is that limit? That bucket of information might be limited after a period of time. And are people going to become reliant on that idea of being able to turn to the phone, asking a prompt, and receiving some type of information, even if it's information that they've heard or information that is not helpful for them in that way? And I think that's really where, the limitation of AI is that it doesn't give you the opportunity to be able to tell you, hey, like, what else can you do here? It's just giving you, 4 or 5 different options, and maybe those haven't really resulted in anything. Does that person then become motivated to find other options beyond just using AI? In some cases they might, but in other cases, as we've mentioned earlier, they may not do that. They may say like, hey, it's too difficult of a problem for me to solve. I'm going to kind of live in the pain. There's lots of different ways that they could handle that, but that would be kind of, one of the things I would be concerned about on that side of it. But kind of going along the same lines, you're going into like a romantic idea of this. I worked with the last 4 years before I started my business, I worked with sex addiction. And so one of the things inside the space of sex addiction is that it's all based in fantasy. And a lot of this behavior is from a place of, trying to get control, but it's also trying to understand, you're exploring your own fantasies and understanding that. And when you get into the idea of artificial intelligence, you combine that with fantasy, you start opening up a door of, how deep does that keep going? And I think it's an endless amount of possibility where being in a relationship with AI there's really no risk to the person who's in the relationship with AI. The person can't get rejected. It's never going to say no. It's always going to accept you for whatever it is that you're into, not into, et cetera. And so I think that there's a real slippery slope in that aspect. So to kind of bring that back full circle, that the hook of it is that it doesn't say no. And so in the same way, does that provide a person true growth as an individual through the process of therapy or the process of a relationship if AI is always going to be agreeing and never ever having conflict and never having anything that's going to help me become a better individual, because conflict does help me grow, regardless if it's uncomfortable or not. I need that in my life. So there's an aspect of that where I guess that's hopefully that answers some of that question, but that's one of the things I would say is a concern. Just knowing from what I've experienced.
As you work with this sexual or part of your therapy work, have you already experienced people being addicted to online girlfriend, boyfriends? Do you have some experience with that? Can you a little bit give us a couple of minutes? We have the time. If you have
yeah. So people, one of the things that as far as being reporting it, I think that's it's one of those kind of things. There's probably some stigma attached to the idea that say that I do have an AI boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, as far as like that's officially the person I'm with. But I certainly see it as kind of an extension of what you've already kind of started experience with. Really starting with pornography, but then really kind of moving to OnlyFans, and how that's just kind of continued to move now into this artificial space, where now you're going from something that was created to something that was created by somebody else to now something created by you. And it just continues to put the person more and more in control of their own destiny and fantasy, if that makes any sense. And I think when that starts to happen, it gets you further and further from reality. I mean, your orbit of sort of being in reality gets, that gets further out. And the further you are there, the less you want to be in reality, because when you're in fantasy, there's a lot of good things, quote unquote, good things that you experience in that space. So I think a lot of people like to be there because it doesn't, or it feels good to be in that space, I guess. And maybe there's more depth to that as well in their mind, right? Versus being in reality, where you have to experience the wide range of pain and experiences, good, bad, otherwise, for us to be able to grow as individual people. So I think there's a lot there that happens when it comes to start, if you put yourself in the space of being the creator, it gives you a lot more control, but it also gives you a lot more, it's just a slippery slope of just how far does that go. There's really no way to know what the bottom is. And that's where I kind of said earlier, we don't know what that consequence is going to be.
Lara, how do you see it? Do you think that people will get hooked on therapy if they would do it with artificial intelligence, because it would just nurture whatever goes on there and just keep it forward and not killing it, but just, make it more desirable or stuff like that? Or you see danger in that?
First of all, I like that you called it an entity. I really like that, because it is some type of entity in the sense that it's always there and it always tells you what you want to hear in some way. So definitely the danger is the lack of challenge, because a good therapist, according to me, as I said, is not giving the answers, but it's also challenging the person, right? Because some people are in denial, which is the most basic self-defense mechanism. So a lot of different things can happen to a person in therapy, and if you don't have somebody, the therapist, showing you that, reflecting, mirroring, it's through certain questions, through very specific questions, then it's a fail. As simple as that. It's not even a danger, it's just failed. And that's the danger, is that people think that they're actually healing, that they're doing therapy. It's a fake connection, because it's great it's great for information, it's great for diagnosis, but it does not do anything else. At least as of now, as of today, there is a real danger because it always agrees with you. It always goes yeah, it just agrees with you all the time. It never really tells you that you're wrong, or it doesn't challenge you. And a good therapy requires to be challenged. Otherwise, there's no transformation. So again, if we want to talk about the dark night of the soul, well, somehow, yeah, we have to go. It requires to go through hard times, to face our fears, to face our past selves, and kind of a rebirth, because that's what it is. When we go through therapy, it's because we want to change, or we want to let go of certain masks that we had in the past, or otherwise we don't go to therapy. Therapy is because there is some pain somewhere that we want to transform into light. And AI is not allowing us to do that because it always agrees with us. And just, it's like you said, it's an entity that is always there, but it's not very helpful, unfortunately. It's helpful for diagnosis and for information. That's great. So more than that, I don't believe it's helpful, no. And so it is a
Let,
danger because people see it as help, and it's not.
let's start our last round when we come to the end of the hour slowly, and open a whole new bag of worms, because it's the introduction round to another four conversations coming. And because I'm always imagining, because I have an inkling how AI is going to move forward, especially helping people with booking their restaurants. And it's more like going to be like a secretary, it's going to be like a PA. It's definitely already a life coach, that's for sure. I mean, I have so many people already who are using it as life coach, and borderline therapy that's already around me, girlfriends, boyfriends, younger generation. It's already like going full blown that way. So as you said, it's only going to be there. It's always going to agree with us, and it's going to be our personal secretary. It's going to be our tutor. It's hugely moving towards children learning math with the help of artificial intelligence. There are already specialized tools that have like I forgot the English word for a tutor to help you or when you don't understand stuff at school. So it's much cheaper than a real person. So it's going to be our tutor, it's going to be our secretary, it's going to be our PA, it's going to be our girlfriend, boyfriend, it's going to be our therapist, or at least life coach. And then I'm always thinking, well, that just sounds like a regular multimillionaire, basically life. I mean, since they're babies, they have their private teachers, they live in them fans, somebody's cooking for them, somebody's cleaning up. They are always right. Nobody ever challenges them. They have the drivers, they have their secretaries, they have maybe they inherit a huge empire with 1,000 or 100,000 employees, and always tells them, and everybody's applauding all the time. And we know how many of these guys turn out. I mean, clearly, I'm not going to use clinical terms, but many of them are not really healthy in their mind. So can we spend the last round imagining, let's use our imagination 10 years from now. We're all going to have, as I said, we're going to have tutors, PAs, whatever. We're going to become big babies where we're all going to agree with us all the time, reading our wishes, booking our perfect restaurants, helping us, therapying us. How would you imagine that a whole society will become where everybody lives the life, so to say, or emotional life as a multi-billionaire, where they're always right, they're always amazing, always is always perfect, that they say everything is so interesting? How would you imagine a society to look like in 10 years from now?
I would say lack of autonomy. Definitely lack of autonomy, less reliant on our own mind, on our critical minds, less able to create healthy relationships, less tolerant to frustration.
If you imagine there will still be relationships at all, you think that in 10 years from now that
Yeah.
anybody will be in a relationship when they have a perfect entity that's fills all of their dreams? I mean, are we going to be great?
But who said it was perfect? Who said it was perfect, right? I mean, if it is perfect, but I don't believe, as of now, as of today, it's not perfect. Again, the most important is attunement, is hugs, is all of that. I mean, if AI can mimic that, empathy and those those little things, those nonverbal cues, the body language, all of that. I don't think AI could do that. I mean, we're not robots,
Yet.
so it's just like, not exactly, we're not robots yet. So humans need human interactions. That's what fulfills us. And we have all the hormones that are connected to that. And I mean, okay, if you can prove that AI can trigger those hormones, oxytocin and serotonin, sure, then yes. But as of today, it's not doing that.
The, there, I read a different book during the summer. Let's what about that? Thank you, Lara. I hope you're absolutely right, and thank you so far for coming. But now I'm opening the last floor to Patrick for the same question. 10 years from now, you think we're still gonna be in marriage? We're still gonna have friends? Or would you see that this we are always right gonna make us crazy and happy?
Yeah, the model, I think, looking at history, and this is just, again, I don't know this to be fact, but I would kind of look at it as sort of the amplification and kind of normalization of social media, in the sense that everybody kind of loved social media and a lot of people jumped on it, and there's been a lot of people who have social. And I use Facebook as the example because it seems like, at least in my when I was in high school and through college and then, like, everybody kind of, that was like the new thing. Everybody wanted to be on Facebook, and so now there's people who are on Facebook, but there's not people as many who use Facebook compared to some of the other social media sites. So I kind of look at it, and I think that there'll probably be like almost like two camps. There'll be a group of people who I don't really want to get as involved with AI, and I want to go back to the way things were used to be before AI, and sort of there's going to be like a disconnect or unplug from that. And then there'll be a group of people who will dive head first into it and will completely embrace what you're just describing, is this almost try to utopic type of space for themselves, and they really are going to be able to they're not going to be able to interact as well with other people because they're going to be in the space of this is what everything I've created. It's a sort of my own world and my own personal space, to a degree that it's with everything. That includes their own relationship. So I think there's probably something kind of like maybe going along those lines, because it seems like Lara said, there's going to be some people who certainly are going to be desiring to have that more authentic and deep connection with other people and will experience those types of things. And there may be other people who do not. So I kind of imagine that that's probably where it's going to be, is some type of two camp kind of system like that, where there'll be people who really embrace
the blue and the red pill, right?
Sure. Yeah. Could be kind of like that, blue and red pill.
Because you have the green background behind you, so it's like really Matrix kind of a look.
There you go. No. That works.
Very intentional, I thought. All right, Patrick, thank you so very much. And Lara, it was a wonderful first session. I think it was a good introduction in all of the different complications, which I hope we will go more in details while this 5 events going to unfold, and different experts from different perspectives. But I think you two did an outstanding job of laying the groundwork, the basics where we are, and maybe reading a lot of media like I've done. It looks we are already much further than talking to real therapists, talking to industry experts like both of you, where we are obviously in the real world not as far down the rabbit hole than in the media world. And that's maybe a good news. And I love your point, Patrick, because I and Lara and I really hope that there will be hugs in 10 years from now. And I hope that there will be some people who take the blue pill and some people who take the red pill, and they'll be more than fine enough, in my personal opinion. Thank you so much, Lara. Thank you so much, Patrick. And for all our viewers, see you back on next Tuesday with the next round. Thank you very much.